Hello and welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this lecture, we will try to understand the contributions of F.W. Taylor to scientific management. F.W. Taylor, Frederick Winslow Taylor, is one of the most seminal contributors to the theories of management as well as public administration. His theory is known as the theory of scientific management. Taylor was a mechanical engineer. Of course, he became an engineer by training rather than education. He had to midway stop his higher education because of poor eyesight, and he had to join as an apprentice. Apprentice is a worker at the low level. By dint of his sharpness and his understanding of the science of work, he rose to very high positions, and Taylor became a very successful consultant. He was perhaps the first consultant in industrial engineering. Taylor's contributions are to the science of work. Taylor said that management is a true science. Management here may be used as an alternative to administration. Maybe as students, you would somewhere get to read whether administration is a science or an art. Most of us generally believe administration is an art rather than a science. But Taylor said management is not only science, but it is a true science. Truly, it is science. Not only that, he believed that management is a science. He tried to do many things to make management scientific. Although scientific management is a school of thought in management and administration, the contribution and this scientific management school is the result of contributions of many people. Taylor was one among them, but perhaps the most prominent among the contributors to scientific management. As was mentioned earlier, scientific management is a broad school of thought to which many people have made contributions, and the most signal and the most important contribution is made by F.W. Taylor. In addition to Taylor, Gilbert and Gilbert, Maurice Cook, Charles Babbage too have made contributions to scientific management. Taylor's scientific management contributions have to be understood in the context of the Industrial Revolution. In the aftermath of Industrial Revolution, the industries were operating in a very confused state of affairs. There was no scientific understanding as to how work has to be achieved. So therefore, Taylor's contributions have assumed great importance. Taylor's contribution is a part of classical theory. The classical theory itself is a contribution of many writers, including Taylor. But Taylor's specific contribution is to what is known as work management theory. Taylor went to the brass tacks of management. He went to the lowest aspects of management, and he focused attention on the individual workers and on making workers' contribution more scientific and more productive. Taylor's ideas can be gleaned or understood under the following broad headings. One is his indictment of traditional practices. Indictment here means criticism of the traditional practices of management. Now, the traditional practices of management are known as seat of the pants approach based on intuition. Now, managers used to take decisions based on their intuition. Intuition is something which comes to one's mind, not just based on one's deep experience or wide experience or deep understanding. So, whatever people felt, they thought that is how the management has to be done. He was critical of this. Secondly, they were following what was known as rule of the thumb method. Rule of the thumb method is trial and error method. Now, for doing anything, there could be two approaches. One is immediately start doing. You may commit some mistakes, then learn from that, keep on refining, and finally you arrive at the best possible way of work. This is one approach. This is what Taylor faulted. This is not correct approach, Taylor said. What he advocated is that before one starts doing any work, one should know how scientifically it has to be done. You have to understand what is the best possible method. In fact, Taylor believed that there is always a one best method. There is one best method of plowing, one best method of painting, one best method of reading, one best method of writing. Whatever task you are doing, there are always many methods, and among them there would be one best method. Pay attention, discover that best method and follow that. Then the productivity will rise. One more problem in the traditional management practices he would discover, or he has discovered, is workers were placed at tasks for which they were least qualified or least capable. Taylor was the first to make a mention that all people cannot do all things. People have different temperaments, different kinds of ideas and aptitudes. So therefore, one has to judge before you assign the work as to where one fits into the organization. So therefore, he talked about the proper selection of workers rather than taking anybody for work. The next important contribution of Taylor is the aims of scientific management. The scientific management Taylor is talking about has certain fundamental objectives. The first objective is increased production. After Industrial Revolution, this was one prime concern of the industry. Productivity has to go up. So Taylor laid the path to lead the industry from low productivity to high productivity. The second objective before Taylor was improving workers' living conditions. Workers at that time were living very primitively with low salaries and very poor conditions of sanitation at the workplace and all that. Taylorism, which is the sum total of ideas of Taylor on scientific management, aimed at improving workers' standards of living. The third important objective is that work should be done in the optimal way or in the best possible way. One more objective of Taylorism was to improve the productive capacity of the workers. And finally, Taylor's whole scheme of things was to ensure harmony in the relations between the management and workers. At that time, management and workers had adversarial relations. Workers used to think that management is garnering all the profits and it's not passing on the due to the workers, and therefore their wages were low. The management was under impression that the workers were lazy and they were not applying themselves seriously, and the company is getting losses. And it's because of the lack of cooperation from workers the management is suffering. So this kind of adversarial relation Taylor sought to replace by a relation of harmony. Now the third important thing is where Taylor has conducted his experiments and all that. He conducted Taylorism, or Taylor's ideas are not mere armchair ideas which came from intuition or by deep thinking. Taylor's ideas are born out of his practical experience of handling industry. He spent more than 2 decades employing scientific methods on the shop floor where the workers were working. He conducted a series of experiments at Midvale and Bethlehem steel companies, and based on that only he has laid the foundations for scientific management. As a result of his experiments and his ideas, Taylor proved that productivity can rise up to 200% without expending an extra pie on the productivity. So without spending more money, by using scientific methods and ensuring cooperation between workers and management, it is possible to raise the double the productivity. He has practically demonstrated this. One of the most important aspects of Taylor is his enunciation of the principles of scientific management. Let me just remind the students that all classical thinkers, including Taylor, believed that there are some fundamental principles of management, and employees or the managers have to learn about these principles and apply them. By applying these principles, one can get two objectives served. One of them is ensuring greater efficiency, and secondly, ensuring greater economy. Efficiency leads to more production or productivity. Economy leads to less spending of resources, including money, time, and maybe raw materials. So these objectives can be achieved by using the principles of scientific management. Actually, Taylor became very controversial, and when Taylor was making his contributions, a lot of hue and cry was made, and there were many complaints against Taylor, and therefore in America, the American Congress is like the Parliament of India. They appointed a committee on Taylorism, and Taylor was asked to come before the committee and explain what his ideas were. Taylor became controversial because the workers' representatives opposed the Taylorism or Taylor's principles and said that Taylor was trying to increase the profits for the management or the owners at the cost of exploitation of the workers. The American Congress wanted to get to the bottom of the matter, and therefore the hearings were held, and Taylor had to depose or give evidence before that congressional committee, during which he proposed some of the principles of scientific management. The first important principle of scientific management is developing science of work. The science of work is nothing but the combination of best methods of work. Taylor said, find out the one best method of doing. Maybe cutting metals, soldering, painting, or galvanizing, or whatever industrial operation you are doing. There are always different ways of doing, and find out the best possible way of doing it. Science of work comprises of all the best possible methods of work. So this science of work has to be first developed, and this is the important principle of scientific management. The second important principle is selection of the best workers. Taylor was of the view that everybody cannot do everything. Every job has some people marked out for this. So therefore, you have to select the best possible workers, and therefore he was the forerunner to what is today called human resource management or personnel management. In the initial days of industrial revolution, people were just appointed to jobs. There was little consideration as to what are the qualifications, what is the nature of work on hand, what are the qualities required of the person to be selected, and is there any training required for the people, and all that was not there. And people were just appointed, and by trial and error, by doing things, spoiling things, they would ultimately learn something. It was a very costly thing. So therefore, he was suggesting both development of the science of work and also the scientific selection of workers. The third important principle of scientific management is bringing 1 and 2 together. 1 and 2 here means developing science of work. Second is scientific selection of workers. Now, there may be scientific methods, there may be the best workers, but sometimes the problem with best workers is that a best worker may say that I know everything, nobody need to teach me. Now, there is a possibility that best worker may not follow the best possible methods of work. So it has to be ensured that the best worker follows the best methods so that the productivity will rise. And finally, Taylor said there should be mental revolution. Mental revolution is a change in the mindset, a big change in the mindset of the employees, the managers, and the workers. I was earlier mentioning about the adversarial thinking, management thinking that workers are enemies, workers thinking management is enemies. This conflict, as Taylor called it, should be replaced by cooperation. Management and workers should cooperate. And he said the problems of management or workers are because of low productivity. Management is not getting due profits because the productivity is low. Workers are not getting good wages because the productivity is low. Once the productivity rises, as Taylor has himself demonstrated, improved productivity by 200% without spending more money by simply using scientific methods. So Taylor argued that if you have best methods, develop best methods, train workers to follow the best methods and make them follow that, the productivity will increase. So therefore, there is much to share. Now the problem is there. The problem of not getting good profits, problem of not getting good wages is because of low productivity. Once the productivity raises, everybody would get more. But as a matter of fact, when the productivity rose by 200%, workers' wages went up only by 60%. This is some piece of research which has revealed this. From this, some people argued that Taylor was more pro-management, pro-owners of industry rather than pro-workers. But even 60% is a stupendous improvement. And work, doing work scientifically means that worker is not wasting his efforts. His body motions or energy is not wasted. Every action or every calorie burned is meeting with some productive result and also some increase in wages. One more important thing is Taylor was concentrating on the lower levels, and therefore people say that scientific management is applicable only to certain aspects of work. Now there are two aspects of management. One aspect is management at the higher level. Second aspect is management at the lower level. The higher level work is mental work. The lower level work is more physical work. People say that scientific management's applicability is there only for physical aspects of work. But for mental aspects of work, say for example, one of the important aspects of mental work is good decision making. So mental work is not a visible work. Decision takes place in the mind of somebody. He would weigh the consequences, pros and cons, and comes to a decision. So we cannot physically see what it is. So therefore, some people say one aspect of criticism against Taylor is that Taylor is more pro-management or pro-owner rather than pro-worker. Second, Taylor's contributions are more applicable to the lower level management rather than to the higher level management. Now, one more aspect, perhaps neglected in Taylorism or Taylor's contribution, is the motivation of workers. Now, motivation is a force that propels a passive worker into an active worker. Motivation is a force that makes a person persist in his work. Motivation helps a person to work energetically. These things are very important. But Taylor's theory does not have anything to answer these questions. Why motivation fails? How to bring about motivation? What are the methods of motivation? Of course, there are so many theories in public administration and management which have addressed this question. And these things you will learn in some of the future lessons. Well, let me just recap what has been discussed. Frederick Winslow Taylor, who started as an apprentice at the lowest level, rose to be the chief executive and became very eminent consultant. His contribution is to scientific management. He said management is a true science, and he has, like other classical thinkers, he has given a series of principles of management. And with the help of these principles, he has practically demonstrated productivity increase and wage increase both can be achieved. Of course, the wage increase to a lesser extent than the productivity increase. And Taylor also has demonstrated that scientific management will give a lot of importance to training, proper selection, and therefore scientific management has given birth to what is known as a new subject that is known as industrial engineering. Yet another important contribution of Taylor was the concept of functional foremanship. We have somewhere in the other lessons, we have seen that there should be unity of command as a principle of management or administration. What this principle says is that there should be one boss for one subordinate. A subordinate should not have more than one boss. If there are two bosses, the bosses may give conflicting orders, because of which the subordinate may become inactive, cannot do anything. Or the bosses may not agree on the approach with which the worker has to work, and therefore there is a problem. But Taylor said that this is not very important. He tried to develop a concept known as functional foremanship, under which each worker should work under the supervision of 8 bosses, depending on their specialization. Taylor said that each worker's work can be broken into 8 different specializations. Best way to do the work is that for each aspect of work, get guided by the best possible supervisor. And this supervisor may be a different supervisor having a different specialization. So by getting supervision from 8 different people or 8 bosses, the productivity can be increased. He has practically demonstrated that. This is perhaps a kind of criticism against the principle of unity of command. How successfully unity of command can be broken and yet you can achieve results is demonstrated by Taylor. And one more aspect of Taylorism, Taylor has also mentioned about incentives to raise the productivity, and some of the critics pointed out that these incentives will break the solidarity of workers. Once incentives come, people compete with each other. Competition at workplace leads to the collapse of solidarity of workers. So workers may look at each other in inimical way. And one more criticism that was made against this is Taylor intruded into the privacy of workers. Taylor went into each minute aspect of work and he was studying them very deeply and minutely, and this amounts to intrusion into the privacy of the workers. And Taylor became controversial with Marxists or left-thinking individuals who broadly condemned Taylor as pro-management and anti-worker. But surprisingly, in Soviet Union, which was then under a communist regime, Lenin advocated Taylorism. Lenin asked the captains of industry to learn from Taylorism. He actively canvassed for introduction of Taylorism on the shop floors of Soviet Union. And it's a matter of history that Soviet Union has achieved a lot of advances in science, technology, space research, industrial engineering and all that. And Taylorism was in some measure responsible for this. I think with this, I would just conclude Taylor's ideas on scientific management, which are essentially on work management, focusing on lower level management with the objective of raising productivity and profitability of industry without spending much, and also ensuring a share in the cake benefit even for the working class. And Taylor's ideas have become very, very popular, and students are advised to read his work, The Principles of Scientific Management, published in 1911. And this gives you an idea of the original ideas of Taylor. Taylor, to assess him, Taylor has a big place among the thinkers of management and administration. Taylor was the one who said management or administration is also a science. It's not only the natural sciences like physics, chemistry, mathematics, which are sciences, but management also can be science. And in fact, that way, Taylor was forerunner to behavioralism. Behavioralism is yet another theory that comes up in public administration. Behavioralism tries to say that the methods of study of science are also applicable to social sciences, including public administration. Taylor, without saying that, was saying much the same. So Taylor's ideas have a lot of practical imprints, and Taylor was also forerunner to consultation. I think consultancy is a big job now. Taylor was one of the first consultants, and there are many consultants now helping industry. And Taylor was a pioneer in industrial engineering also. So he was a pioneer for many things, and Taylor has a lasting place in the history of ideas and in the history of management. And therefore, Taylor and his ideas on scientific management are worth remembering. I've mentioned about one of the important ideas of Taylor regarding functional foremanship. The idea is that there should not be one foreman. Function wise, there should be foremen. Taylor said there should be 8 foremen supervising the work of every worker. Out of these 8 foremen, there should be 4 foremen or supervisors for supervising the planning work. There should be 4 other set of supervisors to supervise the production work. Now for planning work, he said there should be 4 people. One is route clerk. He should check which route the work is taking. If the route is tedious or wrong, he should set it right. The second planning foreman should be instruction card clerk. He will make some instructions as to how the work should be handled, and the worker should follow. The third planning foreman is time and cost clerk. So what is the time consumed? What is the cost of operation? The guidance is given by him. And the fourth planning boss or foreman is disciplinarian. He would take care of the discipline, matters of discipline. Coming to 4 foremen relating to production, the first is speed boss. He would regulate at what speed the work should proceed. Too much of speed or too little speed perhaps have to be avoided. There is an optimal speed about which guidance or direction is given by him. The next production foreman is inspector, and third is maintenance. If there is any breakdown, that maintenance foreman will help. And lastly, the gang boss. Now these are the 8 supervisors or foremen. They should be supervising the work of each worker. So therefore he was saying that worker will be doing different kinds of work, and each aspect of work has to be done scientifically. It will be done scientifically only when it is supervised by a duly qualified, experienced, expert person. He also has mentioned about what would be the qualities required of a good foreman. He has mentioned 8 qualities required for a good foreman. Foreman can be understood as a supervisor. Foreman is somebody just above the level of a worker, the first supervisor. First of them is education. He should have some educational qualifications. Second, he should have general and technical knowledge. Thirdly, he should have manual dexterity and strength. Manual dexterity means manual ability. He should have sufficient strength, body strength to do the works. The fourth important requirement for a good foreman is tact. He should be tactful. He should not be, he should make a distinction between good worker, bad worker, what to say, what not to say, when not to say. So these are matters of tact. There is an irate mob of workers, they are agitated about something. How to pacify, how to calm them, this kind of tact is needed. The fifth important thing is energy. The foreman should be energetic. He should not be dull and hanging. He should be a bundle of energy. He should be looking radiant and bubbling with energy so that the subordinates try to follow him and respect him. Sixthly, he should have honesty. He should not be somebody who is a liar, who says something and does something. Seventhly, he requires a good sense of judgment. He should judge who is right, who is wrong, what is right and what is wrong. So he should be a judge of men and matters. And finally, he should have good health. Good health is equally important, without which there will be loss of mandates and supervisor has to be frequently absent from the workplace, or he cannot have good concentration on work. So therefore, these are 8 qualities of a good foreman. Let me just recap: education, general and technical knowledge, manual dexterity and strength, tact, energy, honesty, judgment, and finally, good health.